Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the world premiere of Cy Brandon's Craters of the Moon for Reed Trio and Piano. We are so excited to have you with us. It's so excited to see people here waiting in the live broadcast, and we are just ecstatic to have the guest artists and musicians and just this wonderful collection of human beings who have all been so supportive of this process. We are so excited that we've been able to continue this project and bring forth this premiere even during this pandemic, and we're grateful that you all can be at home in your pajamas and have fun with us tonight as we explore this beautiful world celebrating Craters of the Moon. To get us going, I'll point you down into the video description. There are a lot of links down there, but also there's also a rundown of the program for this evening. And so you can see all the things that you're going to hear about, but also lots of information for you to follow up on if you're interested in continuing to support the work of the Ladies Reading Society. So to get us going, I'm going to do a quick introduction of everyone. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody and kind of let us know where you're all at. So, of course, we have the women of Trio de Bois. I'm Elizabeth Crawford, the bassoonist, and I'm here in Rexburg, Idaho. And then we have Lori Shepard. Say hi, Lori.
Hello.
And Lori, where are you this evening?
I'm in Seattle, Washington.
Fantastic. We have our oboist, Nicole Fullmer.
Hi.
And where are you, Nicole?
I am in Pleasant Grove, Utah.
Fantastic. And our beautiful pianist, Allison Vest. Allison, where are you?
Hi, I'm in Rexburg, Idaho.
Excellent. And then, of course, we have our fantastic composer, Dr. Cy Brandon. Say hello, Cy. And Cy, where are you joining us from?
Cottonwood, Arizona.
Oh, so wonderful. We have our visual artist, Kelly Ricks. Say hello, Kelly. And
Hello.
Kelly, where are you?
I am in Raton, New Mexico.
Fabulous. And then Ted Stout from Craters of the Moon. Say hello, Ted.
Hi. I wish I could.
That's okay, Ted. We're going to move on. And then to get us going here, we have Jocelyn Robertson, who is a representative from Idaho's Commission on the Arts, which is a partial sponsor for this project. Jocelyn, say hello and tell us about the Idaho Commission on the Arts.
Hi, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really excited for you guys. I'm really excited about this presentation because I think it represents the best of what we all know about the arts. They thrive in adversity. They cut a path through the unknown, the uncertain. They support and guide humanity and build community. Artists comfortable in creativity are constantly innovating, inspiring, and imagining new and wonderful ways like this, which I never would have imagined even a few months ago, to express and share your vision, even under the pandemic circumstances. So the Idaho Commission on the Arts is all about this kind of work. We're a state agency in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts. We're dedicated to bringing the arts to all Idahoans. We offer grants to artists, arts organizations, arts educators. We run programs statewide, from business training for artists to professional development for arts administrators. We collaborate with educators to make arts education a priority in our schools and our communities. And then our folk and traditional arts program helps to preserve, perpetuate, and celebrate the traditional arts in Idaho. So I encourage you to visit arts.idaho.gov to find out more. And thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for being here. I want to say, too, I've written a lot of grants throughout my career. This is the first time I did a grant proposal with the Idaho Commission on the Arts, and it was a really fantastic, straightforward process, very, very quick response. So grateful to them for the support. And then, of course, we were granted for this project, and then the pandemic hit, and they were just so unbelievably flexible with our reproposal for how we wanted to use that grant. So we are truly so deeply grateful to the Idaho Commission on the Arts for allowing us this project to move forward and being so flexible at this time. So thank you so much, Jocelyn, for being here. And you can see on the presentation some images scrolling from Arts Idaho. Do be sure to check out their website and support their efforts. And if you are an artist in Idaho, see what you can do to work with them and collaborating on your next project. It's a fantastic resource here in Idaho. So thank you so much, Jocelyn.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move right ahead. And before we actually watch the presentation, I wanted to talk with Cy Brandon, our composer, about how this project began, which was through a posting that Cy, I believe you made on the International Double Reed Society, which was through Co-op Press. Cy, will you talk about Co-op Press and that grant proposal project?
Well, Co-op Press is a publishing company that I started, and it's basically my music. But behind it is this idea of trying to encourage and get excitement in contemporary music. So we set up a grant program from the profit from our sales and our profits from performances. And it enables us to work with musicians from elementary level to professional, to have them commission a piece of music. And it's written, of course, by myself, but it's a way of getting this excitement into working with a composer and to create excitement of the actual premiere.
It's so great. And it was really, really fun. So we did let's see, I did the grant application, I think last spring. And then Cy, you really dug into the composition basically in June, around there, June or July. And then in August, Trio de Bois had a recording residency. And so we were able to actually read it for the first time last August. We read it one time and then we never saw each other again. But it was really, really fun. Cy, it was so responsive. You never know with composers if like they want to hear from you or if they just want to compose in silence. And it was so fun to go back and forth with Cy. I highly recommend checking out Cy's website where he talks about the piece and all of the projects that he's working on. He is a prolific composer. You can, just by looking at his bio, you can hear his music, of course, on NPR's Performance Today, also on APR's Pipe Dreams, one of my mom's favorite shows. Programs, Animal Planet, MTV's Never Before Seen. So it's been really fantastic to work with just such a seasoned composer.
Well, thank you. Same here.
So Cy, if other musical groups or musicians are interested in doing the same project, what do you recommend for them?
Well, the best thing is to visit my website. The easiest way to do it, instead of my giving you something, is just search my name on Google, and my Instant Encore website will probably come up right at the top. And then there's information about the commission grant.
And there is a link to that in the video description. If you're interested in applying for one of those grants, there is a link right to Cy's website. You can find it right there as well. So now let's finally talk about this piece, Cy, and tell the story of how you envisioned this piece.
Well, when Elizabeth contacted me, she said that the group was very interested in working with the idea of the visual element along with the music. So I started to think about what visual elements I can incorporate. And one of the things that came to mind was the idea of geography. So I got out my trusty Idaho map. And of course, right away, I saw Craters of the Moon. And I said, that would be a great title for a composition, and went to the National Park Service website and read about it. And I actually visited Craters of the Moon probably 30 or 40 years ago, and enjoyed my stay there, but I needed a refresher. And after reading that website, I got the ideas for the three movements.
It's so fantastic. Actually, Ted, I'm going to unmute you. So Ted, I drove past Craters of the Moon again today, rather unexpected. And it's so fun. I'm so glad that Cy selected this piece and this point of inspiration. Right now it's springtime out at Craters of the Moon. And the black of the lava rock and the bright green of the, that high desert vegetation is just stunning.
It's about as green as it ever gets right now.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So
and the wildflowers are starting to come up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fantastic. So Cy, talk about maybe some of your inspiration visually for the three movements individually.
Well, I actually started with the idea of using the three areas of the history of the park, and then kind of deviated from that once I got started. But the first movement is the violent past. And of course, it's not going to be a probably dinner music type of movement. It's going to be pretty violent. And I ended up using a lot of dissonant intervals in that. But I think it still is very expressive of all the volcanic activity around the craters of the moon. The second movement, the Lunar Landscape, when I was writing this, was right at the 50th anniversary of the first moonwalk. And one of the things I read on the website, of course, was the training of the astronauts for geological reasons at craters of the moon. So the second movement is that lunar moonwalk. And then the third movement is more about all the various geography of the park, the forces of nature. So there's the Great Rift, of course, which is what caused all this to occur. Lava flow, vents, cinder cones, and lava tubes. And when I remember visiting the park, the lava tubes were my favorite part, going down into those tubes. So there's a lot of visual aspect of this and translates very well into music.
Yeah, it really is incredible. You know, just driving by it today, it is such a wild landscape. And if you haven't been out to see Craters of the Moon, add it to your bucket list. It really is otherworldly. We had so much fun when the four of us went out there together in August. And it really is, you can't really imagine it. I don't know that the pictures even do it justice, because you just kind of come up on it out of nowhere, and then just the incredible structures. It really is like something from another world. So with all of that said, Lori, I'm going to loop you in, and let's go. Should we watch the first movement? Do you want to say anything before we watch that first movement?
Yeah, I think just watching it, and then we can talk about it afterwards. I'm the one who put all of the imagery with the videos this evening, so I'll kind of let you know where I was coming from, but very much we're going to focus on the park at this point.
Cool. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to mute everyone here in Zoom, and you're going to want to go over to YouTube and unmute over there. right. Yay. I'm going to unmute us all. Yay.
Congratulations.
So awesome.
It's so interesting, you know, working with recording. Oh, someone's
Have to remember to mute that.
there we go. It's so interesting working with recordings in this setting because there's so much compression across all the digital platforms that we're using. And so learning to mix and master audio for this has been really a huge learning curve, because even the audio as we hear it, when I'm done with it, does not sound the same as it comes through the broadcast software. So I will say, for those who are watching, all of these movements will be individually released on our YouTube channel. We have new content every Saturday. So these will be individually released on the YouTube channel. Of course, the broadcast will be up there as well. So very fun. Let me bring, sorry, let me bring you back in here. And Lori, well, anyone else who wants to join in the conversation. So the first movement, Violent Past, very fun.
I'm sure, Ted, you recognized a lot of the public domain photography that's available, and it was just so inspiring. I mean, we had our pictures that we took with our phones when we went on our trip as a group out there, and some of the video, although Allison, I had to slow it way down because she was so excited the whole time she was there that the videos went like, whoo! So it was
Yeah,
fun.
that's me.
Yeah.
But it's just magnificent. Not only the landscape, but all the resources that are available through the Craters of the Moon National Park website and the archives. And later on, we'll see archive footage from NASA during the second movement. So we just really appreciate you having that resource available for us.
Yeah, I just want to say that several of those images were actually taken by our artist in residence that we had at the park last summer, a photographer named David Hunter.
Yeah.
So,
and we've listed all of the works by David Hunter and Jacob. Oh, his name has slipped my mind, but there's another photographer.
Jacob Frank.
Yes. And
he's the photographer
those.
at Yellowstone. Yeah.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
They have credits for all of their pictures at the end of our video and will remain on YouTube forever as long as this live stream does. So
yeah.
Great.
So recording the first movement, ladies, what are our thoughts thinking about the Violent Past and what we saw while we were there at Craters of the Moon last summer? What do you think?
We started rehearsing and then we went to Craters of the Moon, and it sure made a lot more sense when we came back to rehearse again. So that was
Definitely.
Yeah.
It coincided so much better when we could see all of the gnarly growing and curling of all of the lava rock, you know, and then how at the piano I'm just like slamming down. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and it was fun. And Sai, you can talk about this. It was interesting to work with the re-trio plus piano. I've never done that. We've always worked as a re-trio, or we've done like two of us with piano. So maybe talk a little bit about the sonic opportunities with the re-trio plus the piano.
Well, I think the piano added a great deal for me as a composer. And the way the actual piece starts out is with this violent tremolo or trill that starts out in the piano and then taken over by the bassoon. And to be able to use that color was very exciting and enabled me to at least get a good start to the piece with this rumbling of the geological upheaval.
I love that word, rumbling. That's such a perfect word. And that's definitely something you feel, I think, when you're out at Craters of the Moon, this idea of like just the churning literally of the earth as all of this is happening. That's so great. It's so wonderful. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
I didn't even know Craters of the Moon existed until we started this project. So I loved being able to work through it and go see it in person when we did our rehearsal way back in the fall. And that was immensely helpful, especially coming back to it this spring, to be able to like go back and remember being there and seeing those things just visually.
Yeah, definitely. The fact that I just happened to go past Craters of the Moon 4 times in the past 7 days was such a beautiful reminder to me of just those wild images that we really wanted to capture in this recording process. And it's fun too, because I think with the Reed Trio, you have these really, really pure sounds with the high oboe and the clarinet, and then you get like the gurgling depths of bellowing hell of the bassoon, and then the piano kind of links it all together, and it is really kind of raw, and it's such a raw place. Okay, so let's move this conversation forward. We're gonna prepare the second movement. We're gonna kind of move our focus over here to Ted Stout, and Ted, why don't you first really introduce yourself and what you do at Craters of the Moon?
Yes, so I've worked at for the National Park Service for more than 30 years, and I've had the great privilege of working in 7 different national parks. About half that time I've actually been at Craters of the Moon. And people ask me which park is my favorite. I always say whichever one I'm at. So Craters of the Moon is definitely it right now. So you know, Nicole made the comment about how she'd never heard of Craters of the Moon, and I hear that from a lot of people. We're kind of a well-kept secret, and but it is a really special place, and when people do discover it, it leaves a very lasting impression.
Definitely.
With people, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ted, the next thing we're gonna watch is the second movement, which is called Lunar Landscape, and it really was Cy's depiction of you know, a moonwalk, and commemorating, of course, the 50th anniversary of the astronaut training at Craters of the Moon. As you look at the scrolling images there in the presentation, I think there's some images there of that NASA astronaut training. Any insight you want to share?
Sure, yeah. Last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the actual moonwalk on the moon, but it was also the 50th anniversary of 4 astronauts coming to Craters of the Moon. So in 1969, about a month after the astronauts of Apollo 11 had actually landed on the moon and walked on the moon, we had 4 astronauts come to Idaho to learn more about volcanic geology before they went up to the lunar surface. 2 of those astronauts were a part of the Apollo 14 mission, which was the 3rd landing on the moon's surface. And those astronauts were Alan Shepard. He was the first American in space. Edgar Mitchell, he was one of 12 men who walked on the moon. Eugene Cernan, he was actually the last man on the moon with Apollo 17. And then Joe Engle, who was a space shuttle pioneer of the space shuttle missions. And so they came to Craters of the Moon for the same reason that most people do, to learn about volcanic geology, and there's very few places on the planet that are better for that. These guys were all test pilots. They didn't know anything about rocks, so it was a valuable part of their training because they had limited payload and only could bring home so many rocks on their spaceship. So the geologists wanted them to pick out some really good stuff. And so that's why they went to places like Craters of the Moon. They went to Iceland. They traveled widely to learn about volcanic geology.
So how long did they actually spend at Craters of the Moon for their training?
They spent several days, actually. They toured the park, you know, the main loop road, but they also traveled far to the south to an area that at that point in time was not a part of the park. It's now part of the National Preserve since 2000. And they went to a place down there. It's a big shield volcano called the Wapai Flow, which is only about 2,000 years old.
Wow.
And they explored that area. They also went to an ice cave that's down in that area as well.
Oh,
Uh,
so yeah, we have tons of ice caves right outside of us here in Rexburg, which are also really shocking geological experiences as well.
Yeah, that lava rock, you know, is just a great insulator. So it just keeps that snow and ice all through the summer. So
Yeah,
even in some of
absolutely.
our caves up at the monument, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Lori, let's watch the second movement and then we'll continue this conversation. So I'm going to mute everyone here in Zoom. Go ahead and unmute over on YouTube so we can all watch this together.
I love that one.
So do I, Allison. I feel like when we first got the parts from Psy, and like that was of the three, that movement first really won me over. I don't know if it was the 6/8. I love pieces in 6/8. I also
Definitely.
I love the plotting feeling of it, which of course was really salient to this, depicting the story of astronauts up in the moon. And we talked about this so much, this idea that, also to talk a little bit about this process, we didn't, you lay down a click track and then you record to it, but then we go back and re-record and revisit, and we talk about all these kind of musical things. But the idea that we wanted to somehow share this labored feeling, and Ted, you can maybe talk to this in Psy as well, just the idea that like they're in these heavy suits, they are in space, nothing about this kind of lunar landscape experience is easy per se.
Yeah, I could really hear the cadence of a moonwalk there, kind of bouncing across the surface, either on the lunar surface or trying to walk across that lava at Craters of the Moon. So I think you really captured that.
Yeah, absolutely, Sai. It was just really fun.
Thank you. And then basically that theme that you hear in the piano that starts and ends the piece is like a ground bass. It goes through the entire movement, and there's a series of variations that are built upon that. But the plotting is always there.
Always there. Yeah, always there. I'm so excited at some point for us to play this piece live and do an even better job of capturing that. But it was really fun. The other thing, the thought actually I had today as I was passing by Craters of the Moon was not only just the idea of labor on this lunar landscape for the astronauts who trained at Craters of the Moon and then of course went to the moon, but even thinking about the early settlers and pioneers and encountering that area of lava rock. I think it would have just been overwhelming. And of course there's actually Ted, help me out. There's the pass, oh gosh, what's the name of it? Where they ended up kind of cutting out some of it to get on the Oregon Trail there. I can't remember the name of the pass that's right there. It's labeled on the highway.
Yeah, so the route that they took is called Goodale's Cutoff. It's a alternative route on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
And they weren't too happy with Craters of the Moon. They came through in July and August, and it was pretty miserable. So they said unkind things about Craters of the Moon when they came through. They couldn't wait to get to Oregon.
I do have to say that as I sat in my room late at night with a rather large screen and the lights down behind me, and I'm seeing just vast emptiness of a lunar landscape on my bright screen, and then this music coming through, talk about capturing that sense of just needing to put one foot in front of the other and just having isolation all around. Otherwise, I suggest that you all go back and watch this again sometime in a room with a big screen and the lights down, because it's magical.
I love that though, Lori, the idea too of persistence, and even the intervals that Psy has chosen in this movement, the octaves and open fifths, which are very like American intervals, right? Copeland was very fond of them. So even just like the sense of like Americana, it's actually really fun to just view all this and see all of it together. I will share that I actually haven't seen these video presentations yet, so I'm like seeing these for the first time, but it really does bring everything together, the visuals and the music, and it's just so awesome. I love this piece.
Thank you.
It's fantastic.
I love the performance.
Good. So Ted, you've been, sorry, how many years have you been at Craters of the Moon?
I've been there for 16 years.
16 years. And so you actually like live there, is that correct?
No, actually, I live in Peekaboo, Idaho. Yeah.
That's where I've been through there.
So cute.
So I also wanted to point out that I brought my ranger hat here, but in honor of Psy and his production, I also brought my space helmet.
Oh.
Fantastic. That's phenomenal.
When we get to the third movement, you'll finally actually get to see film of us performing the piece. but I was looking at, we always talk about what we're going to wear when we film or when we perform. And I did find an astronaut suit on Amazon for $40 that I was super tempted to purchase.
She tried to get us all in a bright silver jogging suits at least,
Right.
but maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe
Save
not.
that for the live performance.
That's right. We'll come out and do it in the little amphitheater at Creators of the Moon. How's
Absolutely.
that sound?
We would welcome you.
Ooh,
That would be great.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that second movement, just incredibly effective, incredibly evocative, thinking about the astronauts, thinking about the pioneers, just all the history. And certainly because we were there in August, just the incredible heat that comes off of that. And so the idea of like, you got to keep putting your, one foot in front of the other to endure that experience. So great. Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to move on to talking about the third movement, Forces of Nature, which I will say currently is now my favorite movement. And Lori, I'm going to turn this conversation over to you and Kelly. And of course, Ted and Sai, jump in with anything.
Great. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Kelly for joining us. Kelly
you.
is a visual artist that I've known her since we were both in Utah. And at the time that I knew her in person, I didn't realize what an artist that she was, because I knew her as a musician and not as a visual artist. And it turns out that she's just artist through and through. So as the years went on and through the wonderful connecting ways of social media, that we can get to know each other a little bit better in some of these ways that are obscure when you're just having a conversation. I got to see Kelly's art and just fell in love with it, and I've followed it for years. And we started working on this piece in August. And then as I'm watching Kelly's feed about what she's doing artistically, all of a sudden she had a month of November that was quite inspiring for me. And Kelly, I would love for you to just kind of talk about that particular thing. And then I'd love for you to just kind of talk about your inspiration from nature, because that really comes through in your art just so strongly.
Sure, Lori, thank you. So the idea for what I called Moonvember came from a similar activity that a lot of artists do in October. They do an Inktober, where every day for a month, they do one drawing in ink. Some drawing in some style, maybe different types of ink, but it's always ink for Inktober. And I started to think about putting together a project for myself to stimulate some creativity, some experimentation, but I didn't want to just stick with ink, and I didn't want to draw the same picture over and over and over. So I did pick one subject. I picked the moon. It's one of my favorite things to look at, to draw, to think about. And I decided I can do any style, any medium, any phase of the moon, any perspective, just one drawing of the moon every day from new moon, October 27th, to new moon in November, just as an experiment. So I did that, and it turned out to be a really rewarding activity and did stimulate a lot of creativity.
Yes, and not only images, but you didn't limit yourself that way. You have poetry, you have just
that's true.
so much going on with Moonvember, and we only have a small selection of these things. I was so moon-centric when I was trying to find images to put together with this broadcast today that I really just focused in on one small part of your total body of work. And so we do see a lot of moon pictures, but just astronomy in general and desert scenes really seem to come in through your art a lot. Are these places, is that because these are, I already know the answer, but is this because these are places where you spend a lot of time?
Leading question.
So you mentioned I used to be a musician.
Yeah.
You mentioned I used to be a musician. I used to be a professional musician, but I hurt my embouchure. As a trumpet player, you got to have these behaving, and they stopped behaving. And I decided to make a rather radical career change. I have had a hobby of astronomy for many years, and I found out that the National Park Service occasionally has places that they hire people to show people the night sky through telescopes. So I immediately volunteered at Bryce Canyon National Park. They needed a ranger as an emergency 2 months into my volunteering. And so I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I became a ranger. And so for the next few years, I volunteered and worked as a ranger at various parks in the Southwest. And of course, this experience really influenced my visual art. I fell in love, absolutely, with the landscape, the skyscape, these places that we have chosen to set aside for our experience of the planet before humans changed it. It really, you hear this word otherworldly all the time. It's not really otherworldly. This is planet Earth, but it reminds us that it's planet Earth, how special this place is, and how the unique long-term story that human existence has become part of. So it's once that got into my art, it never left, and that's really allowed me to focus my work in a way that I hadn't in the past. So
yeah, I'm sure grateful for your experiences, because man, it helped my creative experience putting this thing together very much.
Well, thank you.
So, this next movement is titled Forces of Nature. And I think we might as well just jump right in.
Great. So go ahead and head over to YouTube and unmute over there.
Bravo, everyone! Bravo, bravo, bravo! Delightful.
Bravo! Oh, so fun!
Fantastic.
So fun! So fun!
It's amazing that you put that together from 4
Oh.
separate states.
Yeah.
Not easy.
No, it's not. And I have to say, I'm so glad, Kelly, that Lori brought you into this. You know, Trio de Bois has been performing together for a decade. And from I think it was our premiere performance, ladies, with North Salt Lake, when we provided artistic supplies to our audience. Was that our first performance?
That was.
And we asked them to create while they listened to us perform. And it was so much fun. We still have that on our Facebook page, the little drawings that were made. But we have always been, we've always loved doing collaborative work, especially in the visual arts. And I'm just so glad that we were able to bring you in for this as well. It's so wonderful. So wonderful. Thank you. Brava, Kelly. Brava.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Beautiful.
for having
So
me.
lovely.
Kelly, the images were wonderful. I really enjoyed seeing
Thank you,
them with my
Cy.
music.
Oh, absolutely. It was intriguing. So thank you.
I just want to say it's exciting that Kelly's a fellow ranger, and
Yay.
just want to make sure everybody knows that Craters of the Moon is also an international dark sky park
Yes. Yes.
as of 2017, and we have spectacular night skies out there. So
Oh, man.
Next trip, ladies.
another reason to come out. So.
Yeah.
At nighttime. Wow.
Yeah, really.
Fantastic.
No, I have to say this again. If you have not been out to Craters of the Moon, add it to your bucket list. It is really extraordinary. And I think it's not it doesn't come up on like everyone's must see of national parks, but it really ought to. It's so fantastic. It's just really, really stunning.
Really
and
phenomenal.
and I can't believe I've lived in Idaho for 4 years, and the first time I went was last summer as we prepared for this project. So shame on me.
Well, I'm from Idaho, and I've never heard about it my whole life, never been once. So it was a delight to go with all of you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Sai, would you say a little bit about the forces of nature? I remember reading about it on your blog and then the emails back and forth, but if you wanted to give some words to also what we heard in the music and what we saw from Kelly's images.
Well, there's a lot of what we call tone painting in there. There are things like the steam riffs that come up, and what better way to represent that with rising passages, particularly in the woodlands. So there was a lot of that, and the piece even ended with that type of thing. Another one of my favorite spots is, it occurs twice, partly through the beginning and then near the end, is representing these cinder cones. And what I had in mind was to kind of create a feeling of going up and going down. Well, it was done to these repeated notes and started with the bassoon coming in, and then a couple of notes later, the clarinet, and then the oboe, and then the piano went up at the very top, being the top of the cinder cone, and then the instruments kind of left in that reverse order. So you kept getting this kind of rising of cinder cones in the landscape.
Yeah. Ted, for those who are less familiar with Craters of the Moon, do you want to talk a little bit about the violent past of Craters of the Moon? Where does this come from geologically?
Yeah. So our volcano is, as Sai already mentioned, it's the Great Rift. So it's just a huge crack in the earth that starts about 50 miles away from the visitor center and goes all the way up to, the highway there. And that big crack in the ground provided an avenue for lava to reach the surface beginning about 15,000 years ago. We've had 8 major eruptive events since that time. The most recent one was only 2,000 years ago. So, and we fully expect that we will have future events. So that's going to be really exciting when that happens.
Now, is this the same? Is it within the same rift that Yellowstone, and that we are actually overdue for an eruption in this area?
Yeah. So Yellowstone is kind of a different animal. So where Craters of the Moon is, and the whole of the eastern Snake River Plain, that used to be Yellowstone at one point in time, but there was a hot spot that the North American plate moved over, and now Yellowstone, of course, is beneath Yellowstone. So that's what created the Snake River Plain. There used to be mountains there. They were swallowed whole by these enormous eruptions that occurred several million years ago. What you're seeing at Craters of the Moon and all across the eastern Snake River Plain is a much more recent phenomena of relatively gentle eruptions, kind of like what have been occurring in Hawaii for many, many years.
Wow.
And when we have future events, we all hope that those are what will happen and not a Yellowstone eruption, because that's something that nobody living has ever witnessed, and we all hope we never will.
Yeah. Well, especially in 2020, because 2020 has been the year, right? I mean, I almost wouldn't surprise any of us at this point. Please no. Well, we have done a phenomenal job. We have followed the script and the timing perfectly. We have only a few minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to Allison to issue all of our thank yous and our follow-up. But I also just want to say thank you so much to Cy and to Kelly and to Ted and to Jocelyn for joining us for this premiere. Thank you so much to Cy for this beautiful piece, and for all the support. For those who are watching and supporting, this will remain, of course, on our YouTube channel. We will also re-release each individual movement over the next several weeks by themselves. And so, Allison Vest, I turn it over to you.
Awesome. We just want to express our deep appreciation and gratitude that we've just had the opportunity to work together. So, Brandon, we just can't thank you enough for just getting this inspiration and wanting to create wonderful new music that we've just had a just pure delight to perform, and also Co-op Press just for their support and getting this all brought up to us. We want to give a huge thank you to Kelly Ricks. We cannot
thank you so
express
much.
You're welcome. Thank you. We just want to just express our gratitude for donating your images for us to use at this time. Please, everyone, follow her. Her website is deepskykelly.com, and she has some amazing artwork there, wonderful props for just wonderful things. It is so beautiful. I just have been moved by many of them, and they're just lovely, lovely. So please, it's just fantastic to look at and just be a part of.
Thank you,
Ted, you're so welcome. Ted, thank you so much again for joining us and being a part of what you do and bringing that history of the world and this area to life, and just over to the Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve.
Thank you so much for including me. Yeah,
definitely. We're so excited. We kept thinking, who else could we reach out to, and thought, well, we could let's talk to the park. So that was definitely a joy for us after climbing through all the things and finding snow in the midst of, I think it was well over 100 degrees at some point. I wore like pants, which was silly when we went to the park, and Nicole's in like her tank top and shorts, and I'm like, oh man, I should talk to her. I know, it was a total blast, and just to see the beauty that's in kind of the disjunct that happens. We can't necessarily have that change and that force of nature without having that distress and torture out onto this just beautiful beautifuln's that we definitely love. So we are definitely grateful to have that a part of our journey here. And then we just really want to thank the Idaho Commission on the Arts for their support financially to this project, as well as the National Endowment for the Arts. We're just really grateful that we have a country that really supports us as artists and individuals as we really try to expand and create and make beautiful things together. And then lastly, we want to thank the Collaborative Musicians Project for having us as a sponsored ensemble. They're just a really wonderful collection of musicians that just support and help sponsor, mentor, create opportunities for musicians to just grow and develop in more professional ways. And just as a reminder, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Ladies Reading Society. We have new content every Saturday. We are on Facebook and Instagram. And we also just released our first album, Taking Root, by Trio de Bois, all on any streaming platform that you can find. So if you've got Alexa, ask her to play Trio de Bois.
Absolutely. All right. So Laura, you're going to take us out of this.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and we'll see you for the next great adventure with Trio de Bois. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Keep waving.